It's just something that we do and we have seen amazing results. We recently saw an episode reach 50 times more people.
Why kill yourself trying to do a blog, trying to create videos, try to go live on Facebook, do the podcast? It's like, why not do one thing well? It's amazing how many podcasters don't email their list when an episode goes live. Do you find that?
I'm guilty of that. I don't have an email list. Welcome to another episode of Smarter Podcasting with me, Neil Mackay, the podcast guy and founder of 7 Million Bytes Podcast. I started my first podcast back in 2019 just as a hobby because I was bored one day, and I learned so much over the years, and I helped that podcast get into the top 10% of podcasts worldwide that I decided to start my own business, 7 Million Bytes Podcast, and we now help clients all over the world reach their audience and connect with their community. We've produced over 700 episodes, worked with over 50 podcasts, helped with millions of downloads, and helped several podcasts get to the top of that Apple podcast charts. And I'm very, very proud of. So in Smarter Podcasting, I want to share with you all the tips and tricks that I've learned and talk to experts along the way to help you make the best podcast possible. Now, in this episode, I'm really excited to be talking about how to repurpose your content and leverage your podcast to create consistent content that boosts authority, multiplies your visibility, nurtures your leads, and most importantly, maintains your sanity. This is something that we do at 7 Million Bytes Podcast, and we have seen amazing results. We recently saw an episode reach 50 times more people by repurposing that content and sharing it. And we believe wholeheartedly that all podcasters should do this. But it takes time and it takes effort to do this. And I'm always keen to learn more from the expert about how to do this better. So my guest today is going to share exactly how to do that. And I'm really excited about how to maintain sanity as well. So she is the CEO of Smooth Business Podcasting, which helps experts grow their businesses by repurposing podcast content. She has featured on MSN, NBC, and Entrepreneurs on Fire, and she helps turn podcast content into assets that attract leads, clients, and collaborations. My guest today is Lyndsay Phillips, and I'm really, really excited to talk to you, Lyndsay. Thank you for coming on.
So glad to be here. I always love chatting with you. And you've got great energy, and who doesn't love your accent? I mean, come on now.
Thank you very much for that. I do get compliments on this accent, which is very strange. I get compliments and attacked. Well, not attacked, but I get made fun of for my accent a lot as well. That's all right. My friends as well. So tell me how you got into podcasting.
I had a content marketing firm, and I was in a mastermind and had a business coach. And so he told me to launch a podcast, and I said no. I resisted. I was too petrified. And so I was like, ugh, I knew I needed more business exposure, right? So I did. And it was painful at first. It took me a lot to get going. And it honestly took probably almost a year. And then I was finally like super comfortable. I was starting to see traction. And I had some clients that were like, hey, can you do this for me as well? I'm like, sure. And so because I launched it myself and what have you, made many mistakes along the way, as you do. And so I started to do it for my clients. And then it just morphed. And as you know, like with the business, it's just expanded so much over the past, 10 years. And I just kind of like niche the business down from content marketing, which was so broad, and just, niche down into podcasting. And then I've done launches and production. Don't want to do that anymore. And so niche down again in just the repurposing and the leveraging of the podcast. So it's been a ride.
Now, this I feel is a bit of a buzz these days in the podcast industry. So it's amazing that you already niched down on that and you already are an expert in it, because I feel like, I know, right? I feel it's become something now that I totally believe in. As I said at the beginning, I can see the benefits of it, but I'm by no means an expert in it at all. So why do you think content repurposing is so important?
I mean, we all know that content is king. That phrase is overdone a little bit, but it is true because it's how you attract new prospects. It's how you expand your reach. It's how people can understand your expertise and what you do. And it's a way to nurture and convert your leads. And so you have to make content regardless. So why kill yourself trying to do a blog, trying to create videos, try to go live on Facebook, do the podcast? It's like, why not do one thing well? Sure, you can do videos on the side and other reels and what have you, but why not do something well and leverage the heck out of it and it just make your life easier and just leverage it strategically so that you can use it towards your goals that you have for your business.
This is what I'm really excited to hear about is the strategy behind it, because this is what we preach as well, is just create one piece of content and then use it to the maximum. So what we say is create a video, and it does cost more money. It does take more time, but create a video. Then we're going to take the transcript from that. We're going to create a blog post. On that blog post, we're going to have the buttons for your podcast. So then the blog, you're going to get the SEO is going to lead to your blog. Then the blog is going to lead to your podcast and YouTube as well. And then we're going to take that short form. We're going to use that video again, create that one piece of content. We're going to break it down into little clips, and then you can post that everywhere as well. And like I said, we've seen a 50x reach increase just from doing things like that, which is absolutely incredible. But on the flip side, I've had someone recently come to me and they said, look, we just want to make the short form content. They just wanted to jump to the little videos. Yeah, no, I love your face, right? Because that was my reaction as well. I was like, I don't really know how you do that. I was like, I think that's going to take quite a lot of scripting. You're going to really, because what we do is we just take the sound bites, the best bits that are natural, that are dripping, and that makes the best content. So you might need to make an hour video for us to get these little clips out there. I don't actually know how you just script a 60-second soundbite. But so I'm so glad to see your face, because I wasn't sure if I was correct. Like most of the things, especially in the beginning, you're like, am I giving you the rest, the good advice? I'm not sure. So would you agree with this?
Wholeheartedly. And to me, there's a natural flow, right? When you're talking with someone, even when you're doing a solo episode. And so you have this stream of consciousness where you can explain something so much better and maybe even attach stories to it. So I feel like doing it that way, you have more organic and authentic content. But from a strategic point of view, oh man, you need the full video in YouTube. You need to have it on your website. You want to push traffic to your website so that you can convert them, right? Have your call to actions on the sidebar. And when someone else is going to your website, say you apply to speak at an event, or you pitch someone to guest on a podcast. And if they go to your website and they see blog posts that are your podcast, but also you guesting on podcasts, and they hear you and see you in action, they're more likely to book you because they've seen you, walk the walk and talk the talk. They've seen you, how you present, how you interact with people, how you share your ideas, and how you're going to impact their audience. And so it just naturally, you're killing more birds with one stone, so to speak.
I absolutely love that. I'd not thought about that reason for making the full video, but again, you want to show off yourself, not just this little clip. And this reminds me of something that I've brought up a couple of times, and it shows the power of podcasting. Have you heard about how some people fake being on a podcast to promote their brands?
No, that's insane.
Google it. This is a thing now because podcasts are so respected. And this was before the recent American election, which has now been known as the podcast election. I've seen it referred to because the candidates, had you heard that?
No.
Yeah. So because Trump, especially about both of them, Trump was on Rogan, Kamala Harris was on Call Her Daddy, and they both featured on lots of podcasts, which was the first time, I don't think in the 2020 election, that was a thing at all. So this was the first election where the candidates really used podcasts to reach people. And it shows, finally 2024, the power of podcasting, which obviously people like me and you already knew, but it really brought it into the mainstream. To refer back to what I was saying about people using podcasts to boost their brand or faking being on podcasts. So the most famous one, and I've written a blog about this, so you can go check it out. So there's a guy, you may have seen this. He had a brand called V-Shred, and you may have seen it. Yeah, you've seen it pop up. You've seen the short form content pop up, the ads on Instagram. And it's one of these things like, you've been working out the wrong way the whole time. Do my new program. And, and he looks amazing. And I'm sure his program is great and it works. Like, I'm not doubting the efficacy of his program, but he has one reel, and I've seen it, or one short, where he's talking into a Shure SM57, I think. He's got a red curtain background and he's talking facing the host like this. And he's talking earnestly about this new program. Now, I don't know if you know or not, but that's the exact same microphone that Joe Rogan uses. And he had the same headphones on that Joe Rogan uses and the exact same curtain in the background that Joe Rogan uses. He was not on the Joe Rogan podcast and has never been on the Joe Rogan podcast. And he didn't say explicitly that he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, but if you saw that clip, and I remember seeing it, you would assume pretty quickly, oh, he's been on the Joe Rogan podcast. That gives legitimacy, authenticity, brand authority, leadership. You're going to believe him and you're going to probably get his product because you've been led to believe that he has been on the Joe Rogan podcast. And so that to me shows the power of podcasting and the power of those short clips, because I doubt he did an hour-long fake episode. And I don't want to call the guy out, but I do want to call him out. I've done a whole blog post about it. He's been called out all over the internet. Definitely made a short clip to be able to say that, make it look like he's been on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Interesting. Yeah, I have never seen that, but I could see it because it is a huge, a credibility move to be able to say that you're a guest expert, especially if you're making it look like you're on some major, stream or show or, on stage that yeah, exactly. That's like me posing on some stage, taking a picture and it be like, oh yeah, I was speaking on stage. Yeah, to maybe my son down on the floor and there's no real audience. That's crazy.
So I'll send you that link to the blog post. You can check it out on my website. I'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, it's a real thing. And he's not the only one that has done it. There's been quite a few instances of people. But so my point is the power of podcasting and the power of short form content. So explain to me your process, your system for creating that short form content, or not just the short form content, repurposing that one piece of content. And what I'm really excited about to hear is how you can nurture your leads, create your brand authority, and all that stuff that comes with it.
For sure. And feel free to interrupt me at any point to ask anything. But once we have an episode, it's been recorded, then we automatically get the content for YouTube and especially like the keywords, right? So sometimes we adjust the title a little bit for YouTube, get all the tags so we can optimize it because you want the video in YouTube. People search on Google and in YouTube. So you definitely want your podcast there. I know some people will push out their podcast where it's just the audio. I prefer the video. That's how I digest podcasts. And then when you create the blog post, you can embed that video. So that way you've got the audio player, you've got a blog, you've got, content that people can skim easily, and you've got the video embedded. And so that way you are attracting all sorts of different audiences because they learn in different ways. And then we always create an email or two that go out to the list. It's amazing how many podcasters don't email their list when an episode goes live. Do you find that?
I'm guilty of that. I don't have an email list. Yeah, and it's something we need to probably look at in 2025 because, I don't do that at all.
Yeah, but it's just an easy way to nurture them, right? And obviously, we create those reels, YouTube shorts. Carousels are super hot. So we usually do those when it's a solo episode because it does take a little bit more time. And you want to showcase your own authority in it like a beefier way. I always say it's like a little mini book where you swipe through and at the end, there's always a call to action, quotes, LinkedIn articles. There's just so many ways of slicing and dicing and reusing it. Um, and if you are having guests on where you're interviewing, when you create that content, you have so much more assets to give that guest. So it makes it so much easier for them to share. And if they share the reels and shorts, it goes to their followers, yes, but it actually goes to people that are not already following them. And then when you post it, it goes out to people that aren't already following you. So that way you're like tripling your ability to reach more people. And I think that is really key.
And what platform do you think is the best one to do that?
To create or schedule.
To post onto, so like, you got LinkedIn, Instagram, blah, blah, blah.
It does depend on your audience because some audiences, it might be more B2C. So therefore, LinkedIn isn't really used or their ideal client's not there. So you really have to take your avatar into consideration. But Instagram, again, they've got the posts, the reels, LinkedIn. If you're B2B, absolutely LinkedIn. I have just been delving into that over the past year more so than ever. And I'm getting it back tenfold. Whatever you put in, you automatically get back. And I don't love Facebook. And I know, you can have a whole conversation about Facebook and why it's not so great at the moment. But you still, I feel like, need to be there. Some people are using TikTok. Some people are still using Pinterest, but and obviously YouTube Shorts. But my main ones I say are LinkedIn, YouTube Shorts, Instagram, and Facebook.
No, I would agree wholeheartedly, apart from Facebook. Because, yeah, I do post on there because they own everything now, right? So they have Meta. So you can just automatically post from Instagram to Facebook, but it's not really, it's just changed so much, Facebook, and it's just not the place to really grow your business, I don't think, anymore, is it?
I think they have killed it so that it makes it harder for businesses to get any reach, to get any engagement, even people that are following you. It's like I have friends and I'm like, I don't see them in the feed. I'm like, that makes no sense. So yeah, it and the cost, with the Facebook ads and so forth. And there's just so many rules now that it just to me makes it harder. But some people are crushing it. So
I think the best piece of advice I've ever been given about Facebook and Facebook advertising, as you mentioned, is when you're doing advertising for your podcast, if you advertise on Facebook, so crazily enough, not everybody listens to podcasts yet, right? Most people do now. I think it's like 60% maybe in the US. I'm not sure about Canada, but it's growing, but not everybody listens to podcasts. And so if you advertise on Facebook, you're asking 40% of the people to do something they've never done before. You're not just asking them to listen to a podcast. You're asking them to listen to podcasts. So you're asking them to change their behavior or adopt a new behavior. So that's one of the most difficult things in the world, is to create behavior change. And so you're actually wasting a lot of your money because most of the people you're advertising to don't even listen to podcasts. So if you're going to advertise, reach people who listen to podcasts, which is why advertising on Spotify or something like that can be really helpful. But we're going down a different track there. So tell me about your 4-step process, because this is what I'm really excited to hear about.
oh, well, obviously we create all of the content, we publish it on YouTube, publish it on the person's blog, and create the social media posts and pre-schedule it. But the thing that we take into consideration is it an interview? Is it a panel? Or is it a solo? When it's a solo episode, we tend to do a little bit more content and do the carousel so that, yes, you want to share the episode, but we'll actually use that content in a way to share an event that they have coming up, or a lead magnet, or a program, or an event, so that you're using it to actually get more clients and leads. Which obviously, when you have an interview and you have someone on your show, you can't share their clip and then ask someone to, grab your checklist. It just doesn't make sense, and it's kind of ooey. It's ick. So I feel like podcasters might want to consider doing more solo episodes so that they can help achieve their goals. But if your goal is to have people on your show to network, to get partners, to collaborate, to build your authority and make those connections and tap into their audiences, then great. You're fulfilling that, right? By interviewing them. Just make sure that you are tagging them and make sure that they do actually receive the guest assets that you give them, because email, good Lord, and make sure that, follow up and that they are sharing it and using it and promoting the episode as well, because you want to get as much ROI out of it.
So I have two questions on that. First of all, what is a carousel?
Oh, sorry. So it almost looks like a slideshow. So on Instagram, it's like, let's say 5 images, and then you like, those can't see me, I'm swiping my finger. And then in LinkedIn, it looks like the same, but it's actually a PDF. But basically, you take your finger and you can slide. Normally, it's like 5 ways to blah, 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 5 reasons to XYZ. And so then you can flip through those images and just think about how much more information you can input in that carousel versus one quote, one tip, one reel. And then the last slide, the images, we call them slides. The last one, you can have a call to action. So whether it's your lead magnet, an event to DM you to work with you, whatever that looks like, and then mirror that call to action in the social post. People consume them. I am obsessed with them. I'm like, ooh, I get to digest like all these great tips in a super short amount of time. I feel like it's like a little mini book that I can like a Cole's Notes. I can just skim through it. They're so good.
No, I agree. They are great as well. And it makes you engage with the content as well, right? And if you can have somebody, even if it's for a few seconds, and they stop on your post and then swipe through the 5 steps, like that's crucial. That's amazing, right?
I know. And now Instagram says you can use the carousels as a reel, like as a video. I haven't tested that yet. I still don't quite see how that works, but anyways, but people are starting to test it out. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out. But and you just have more opportunity to share your expertise and show how you can help others.
And my second question was around guest assets, because this is something I don't do well at all. And I've never done well in podcasting. I never, again, independent podcaster, apart from the podcast, I'm producing my own podcast. It's time, right? You'd like create the asset. I do it for fun for my own podcast, and you just don't have the time. But it is something we've talked about recently on this show, is creating like even just a LinkedIn post for the guest. Use ChatGPT, create it for them, give it to them, and ask them to do it. And I still don't do that, even though we talked about it on this episode. So what guest assets do you create, and how do you encourage the guest to post? Because it's something I just have never done, and I know I should.
So I do set up the expectation ahead of time. So when you book on my show, the very bottom question is asking, will you agree to help promote and share this episode? Yes, or I can't remember what the no is. But it's just saying, if they click yes, you're like, I see you. You said you were gonna. And then we work it into the process, right? And even in the interview, at the end, I'm like, okay, here's when your interview goes live. I'm going to be sharing some assets, a reel, this, that, the other. I will tag you, but please share. So again, it's that other touch point and setting that expectation within the interview itself. And then we weave in the assets just with our system. So naturally, my team, again, is creating all those assets. We have another document, and it's got like a pretty banner on the top, and it's for guest promotional for the show. It's got all the important links in there, my social media links, so they know to tag me. And then we just copy and paste our social media posts that we're already creating and just rejig it so that it's front, not a third person kind of a scenario. and then link to like the little video clips, the graphic, because we upload everything to Google Drive. And then we have a templated email. And then so we send that out. And then 4 days later, we send another one to follow up. And again, we just make sure that they actually hit reply and say, yes, I got it. I will forward it. Because again, sometimes you never know if someone gets the email or went to spam or, they've been sick for a week. So those little follow-up steps are really important.
That is a really impressive system. I'm very, very impressed with that. My question is, do you get pushback, or what if somebody ticks no in the beginning? Because I guess maybe for me, I've maybe not done it so much because I'm a bit nervous to be like, hey, be on my podcast. And by the way, can you help me promote it?
I've never had that happen, to be quite honest. Yeah, I'm like of the mind where I always see the best in people. So I never think that anyone's actually going to say no. And to me, I'm like, if you're guesting on a show, it's crazy not to share it because you're showing yourself that, ooh, I guested on a podcast. I'm an expert. Here's all the stuff I spoke about that can help you. Like to me, there's no reason why you wouldn't promote it. So I guess I'm not in that, not to say that you have a negative mindset, but it doesn't even enter my mind, to be quite honest. And some say they're going to and they don't. But again, it's all in that follow up. And I think if you have a good relationship with that person, like I know I wouldn't want to let that person down. And if you have a good relationship and you've had like a pre-chat and you have good rapport in the podcast, like I would hope that as a human being, you wouldn't want to let the other person down.
I think that's perfect. And I believe in kind of law of attraction. And if your energy, like you're describing there, I just don't expect them to say no, they're not going to. I think for me, so I started back 2019. My first podcast was a Vietnam podcast. I still do it to this day. I interview people connected to Vietnam. There's no business around it. It's just a hobby for fun. I love it. And I think maybe I thought in the beginning, and I probably continued that thought on that, I don't want to bother the guest if they can promote it as well, but I really should. And even with that podcast, I don't do that. This podcast now has been going for about a year and a half, Smarter Podcasting. We want to help people make the best podcast possible. And we are interviewing experts like yourself. And I think it's a hangover from that last podcast. On this one, I've just continued. I don't build that in or ask people to promote themselves. And I realize that I'm probably doing the guest a disservice because like you've just said, I'm interviewing people who are experts in podcasting and experts in their field, and they have so much value to share. So why would I not be like, hey, can you share this? So I do tag most of my guests when I do a post, and we focus on LinkedIn. We don't do Instagram, just mostly LinkedIn. But I should start to create more of those assets. So this is the strategy I was excited to learn and hear about when I talked about it in the intro, because these are things that I hadn't really thought about.
Yeah. And it's all about the systems, right? Like once you embed it in the routine and your system, then you don't have to think about it. It doesn't feel like an extra step. And when you think about it, if you're creating like ChatGTP can set up those email templates and the rules of engagement and all that stuff. And once you've done it once. And you just need someone on your team to be able to adjust the asset so it's in the point of view of the guest, and to have a task already set up to send that email out. And I do make sure that they copy me in just so I can see it.
Just a small check that your team is doing it.
I know. Type A. If you have a project management system, then you have like a task list of all the different things that need to take place, whether they're assigned to you or someone else. And then you just use that task template over and over and over again, rinse and repeat. And so it takes a couple of weeks, to kind of get into a groove, but then it's just like second nature.
Amazing. And I love systems. And I love what you said as well about you just need to set it up once. And then, because I think about, so we have a system for when one of our clients books a podcast, we give them a link and they just fill it in, and then it goes right into Notion, and then production assistant gets a notification by email, and then she adds it into our other, like into another page, and then the editor gets a notification. And it's this like seamless system. That took me 2 days to set up because I had to learn everything. I didn't know anything. I used fill out form. I had to figure out how to integrate it with Notion. Didn't know how to set up automations. I had to play about with it. I remember it took me 2 whole days of just figuring this out. But now it's done. It is literally just, I mean, you don't even think about it and it all just happens. And I think that, thank God I just spent those 2 days getting this done and how much time it saved me.
Short-term pain for long-term gain, 100%. Setting up those procedures and the systems, and even just having the mental bandwidth to like stop for 3 hours and do it, it just feels like such a big like, oh my God.
Yeah, I remember I
Oh
was
yeah,
like, oh
once
my
it's
goodness.
done. Yeah.
I remember thinking I need to be doing something else right now. But then I got into it as well. And once you get into it, you're like, I can't stop. What I'm really excited to learn from you is how you can take that repurposed content and create leads and sales from it.
That's where the solo episodes really come in, or repurposing the episodes that you guest on as well, because you can create your own show notes for that. You can put it on your blog. If you have the raw video, you can put it in your own YouTube channel. Like you're not stepping on the host's toes at all. So, really thinking about it in how can I position the content that ties into my services. So if I have a reel and the tip is about repurposing podcast content and it's really brief, then I would say, hey, if you're really struggling with this and you want support, DM me. Let's hop on a call. This is what I do for my clients every day. Or you can say, or, put checklist in the comments or a flame emoji in the comments if you want my XYZ resource to help you do this very thing. So it's just connecting to me, it's like the pain, the content, which is the reel or the carousel, and then how can you tie it in to one of your offers? And it's not selling, right? You're like, how can I help you further? How can I give you a resource? You're watching this reel because you're like, "Oh my God, I totally get this. I totally relate." So like, how can I help you better? And so that's where the mindset shift. It's like you're not selling all the time. Oh, I don't want to put links. I don't want to ask. I don't want to do this on all the posts. If people don't understand what you have and how you can help them, they're not going to fly over to your website and just magically like dig through everything to figure out what your offers are. You have to tell people.
Lyndsay, this has been absolutely amazing. I cannot thank you enough for coming on Smarter Podcasting and sharing this. I've learned so much. I think what you're doing is incredible. And thank you so much for sharing this with me and our listeners and our viewers on YouTube. I really, really appreciated it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been so great chatting with you.
You are very welcome. And remember, if you like this podcast, follow, subscribe, turn on notifications. Make sure you get notified when there's a new episode out. They come out every 2 weeks, but I'm excited to tell you in 2025, we're going to be changing to weekly. So we're going to be bringing you even more content, more value, helping you make the best podcast possible. If you want to work with 7 Million Bikes Podcast, then please get in touch. Go to 7millionbikes.com. You can see some of our previous work there. We would love to help you just make the best podcast possible. And we know that editing takes so much time and can be so frustrating. And so we would love to help you with that. But we can do everything from podcast planning all the way through to repurposing your content and publishing and promoting it as well. So please get in touch. And if you know somebody else who needs help with their podcast, then share this episode with them, share this podcast with them so that they can learn more as well. So thank you very much, Lyndsay. Thank you for tuning in, and I will talk to you soon. Cheers.
Thanks.